Beginning here in section 24, we're going to embark on a multi-sectional analysis of the Harmonized Tariff Schedule of the United States. As our slide title indicates, we're going to start with an introduction, but we're going to be on this subject for quite some time. The HTS US, that Harmonized Tariff Schedule of the United States, is the tool for use and classification of imported merchandise for rates of duty and statistical purposes. That is the official HTS US definition. Basically, we're taking a prose-based product description from an overseas vendor's commercial invoice and assigning an HTS number to it. Second bullet, all goods imported into the U.S. are subject to the provisions of the HTS US. And as an interesting governmental note, the HTS US is published by the United States International Trade Commission, the USITC, whose logo we'll be seeing on the right-hand side of this as well as upcoming slides. Importers should rely primarily on the most current official HTS US in preparing customs documents, in preparing entries, basically. And that most recent version is always going to be found online. Second bullet, and this is consistent with reasonable care, informed compliance, etc., the proper classification of imported goods is the legal responsibility of the importer, not the customs broker. Third bullet, interpretation of the HTS US falls to USCBP, especially as it relates to the classification of goods. Quick trade tip, and we'll be using this truncated version. The HTS US is also referred to as the HTS. Now we're starting to get a little bit more into the details of how the HTS is structured. The nomenclature in the HTS is based on the 6-digit system provided by the World Customs Organization, whose full name is the Harmonized Commodity Description and Coding System, found in chapters 1 through 97. Let's stop here for a second. We've talked a bit about this. Let's talk some more about it. The WCO, to which the U.S. is party, has classified every product imaginable up to a 6-digit level. The first 6 digits of any product classified by a country that is party to the WCO is going to be the same. The first 4 digits, as we will note in our sub-bullet, is called a heading. The full 6 digits, or 6-digit subordinate, is a subheading. We'll be seeing lots of that in many real-world examples. We would be remiss, especially in the case of the United States, as we state in our last sub-bullet, if we didn't say countries that are party to the WCO can extend their classifications beyond 6 digits. The U.S. definitely does that. The USTS US utilizes 8 digits for legal classification and 10 digits for statistical reporting purposes. A product can be legally classified using 8 digits in the HTS US. We use 10 in the United States because the additional numbers add greater granularity to the classification of specific products. As far as how the HTS is broken down, that's what we're going to talk about here, and as you well know, we'll be seeing lots of visual examples of them in just a bit. The legal text of the HTS includes the following: General Rules of Interpretation, the GRIs as they're called. We'll have lots of examples using those. Additional U.S. Rules of Interpretation. The GRIs are agreed to as part of membership in the World Customs Organization. Everybody uses these GRIs, at least they're supposed to. What we see in our second sub-bullet point are additional U.S.-specific rules of interpretation. We'll be going over the general notes, statistical notes, sections within the HTS that deal with different commodities, and the chapters within the HTS US that deal with specific commodities. Continuing on, and what's found in the legal text of the HTS, headings and subheadings, as we just spoke of, article descriptions that hopefully will match up to the product description found on an overseas supplier's commercial invoice. Tariff rates, the actual rates of duty, 10%, 2%, duty-free in many instances. And special tariff programs, preferential duty programs, and free trade agreements, essentially. We'll be seeing examples of all of these. Let's wrap up this slide with a trade tip. Pretty amazing stuff. The most recent version of the HTS US is 3,844 pages long with more than 20,000 different commodity classifications. In previous sections when we talked about 19 CFR and we said it was nice to be an expert, but there's just too much material and we're better off understanding on how to find specific information that we're looking for, that principle is even more applicable to the HTS US. It is huge. It is vast. We have to understand how it's structured and how to go find what we're looking for. That's what we're aiming to do in these upcoming sections. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the topics that we mentioned in the previous slides. GRIs, General Rules of Interpretation. 6 internationally agreed upon rules to properly apply the Harmonized system categories. We said this, the GRIs are used by a couple of hundred countries around the world, members of the WCO, essentially, the World Customs Organization. We also made mention of additional U.S. rules of interpretation, which are rules of interpretation that apply to the 8-digit U.S. subheadings, that legal classification that we talked about. General notes, that we will see in some detail, are U.S. provisions for applying the HTS US, which include explanations on things like rates of duty, the countries to which they pertain, and rules related to qualifying for a particular tariff treatment. In other words, the rate of duty specific to a classified product, the country of origin, and any preferential duty programs or free trade agreements that a product might be a beneficiary of. We'll see all of them. Statistical notes, we won't focus too much on this, but they do provide an explanation of how import and export data are to be reported. What we will talk in some detail about are sections and section notes. A section is the grouping of chapters within the HTS US. Right now, there are 21 groups of chapters, broad-based commodities that fit into a section. Within each section, there are section notes, and they are found at the beginning of a section that explain particular terms, the meaning of provisions, or that point out goods that are included or excluded from a section. If we are classifying products, especially for the very first time, it's a good idea to start with the section and the section notes. Chapters. This is where we start to go from the general sections, for example, to the specific classification of goods. Chapters comprise the 96 different groupings of goods that cover all products. Each chapter contains the 8-digit legal classification and the 10-digit statistical classification. Chapters are where we see the progression of classification from items that require little processing, for example, natural resources, they would be in the earlier chapters, to products that require advanced manufacturing. They would be found in later chapters. As a quick note, chapters 98 and 99 are reserved for national use. Trade tip, the most updated version of the HTS US is available through the USITC at the following link. We're going to be using that link pretty extensively. This is a screenshot of a great tool provided by the USITC, which, as we note in the middle of the screen, HTS Search. We do want to point out, however, in the upper left-hand corner, we see that we're on Search. This can be used as a general beginning to get to the proper classification of a product. Just type in the name of the product and see where we go from there. What we'll see in just a moment is the view screen, which are the actual sections and chapters that we can use to go straight to that granularity of product classification that we spoke of just a few moments ago. HTS Search is probably the most basic beginning point that we can use when we want to go from the very general in terms of a product description to the very specific classification of that product. As we said just a moment ago, we can also use this tool in view mode, which is what we're doing here. We can see that in the upper left-hand corner. This is just an excerpt, but going down to the bottom, it illustrates the point we were making about sections and chapters within that section. We see Section 1, Live Animals and Animal Products. Chapter 1, Live Animals. Chapter 2, Meat and Edible Meat. 3, Fish and Crustaceans. If we are an importer of these types of products and we're looking to classify them properly, this is where we're going to start. This Harmonized Tariff Schedule tool provided by the USITC is very, very good. And importers and customs brokers out in the work world use this every single day. We're going to stop here and get into a visual review of the HTS US when we start back up. This will be good stuff. Come back as soon as you can.